Right, welcome ladies and gentlemen. I don't think we'll ever truly know whether Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon was a success in terms of true figures. It's going to be very, very difficult to figure that out. I think the true gauge of success for his epic sci-fi saga, that's what he's billed it as anyway, will be if there's more. Will Netflix pay for more? Because they've coughed up quite a lot of cash for these two films. One long film, one long music video, however you want to call it. I don't know if we're ever going to see it being successful, but one thing we do know from at least figures which we can see tangentially is that the viewership in the United States for Rebel Moon Part 2, I mean, it dropped by 40%. It's a lot. It's not a small amount, it's a lot. Interesting. Doesn't really scream success. So, yeah. I watched this movie. It was terrible. I live tweeted it at Missed Reviews. Follow me over on Twitter. Anyway, let's take a look, ladies and gents. Hit subscribe if you're new, folks, and turn the bell notifications on. But basically, look, Netflix subscribers reportedly tuned out of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon series with one analytics company, revealing that viewership dropped over 40% from the first film to the second. Now, the company itself is Samba TV. They're not connected to everything, obviously, but they can judge and show you the metrics which are verifiable for themselves. As in, you know, this is a metric like for like. Hey, we measured the first one. Here's the metric. Hey, we measured the second one. Here's the metric. So it is a drop-off. Whether that translates to a larger and broader picture is quite difficult to tell. But as a drop-off, that's significant. A huge amount, actually. So, 40%. Samba TV reported back at the end of December that 1.7 million US households watched Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, in its first 5 days on the streaming service. So, a lot. A lot. That's a lot. So Part 1 of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon landed on Netflix last week, 1.7 million households. And I think for Samba TV, I think that they say it's like 1/3. So you calculated upwards from there for a broader picture. It will never be exact, but it's a look over anyway. And so earlier this week, the company reported that only 967,000 US households tuned in to watch Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. That's a decline of 43.12%. Although they do say here it's not apples to apples comparison because this isn't over 5 days. So it's over 3 days. But is it going to be any different? Maybe. I don't know if I can see. I don't think it's going to be. I can't imagine it. So, yeah, metric, comparison, is it exactly the same? No, obviously not. But I can't imagine it's going to be that different. You know, I can't imagine it's going to change that much. Part 2 of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon hit Netflix last week to almost 1 million tune-ins. Did you watch? Black and Hispanic households were particularly likely to tune in, each over-indexing by 16%. So Netflix themselves, by the way, they've released interesting numbers. So, I mean, even they show a reduction in views, by the way. So, that again, that's why I wouldn't be too worried about the numbers not being a direct comparison to one another. But basically, according to their own data, so released on April 19th, the second film racked up 44.2 million hours viewed for a total of 21.4 million views. Now, interestingly, it's important, the runtime clocks in at 2 hours and 4 minutes. So Netflix calculates views by dividing the total hours viewed by total runtime, and then it rounds it up to the nearest 100,000. It's quite a big number, but alright. So in contrast, Rebel Moon Part 1 had 54.1 million hours viewed and 23.9 million views. It was slightly longer, 2 hours 16 minutes, and that was released on December 22nd. So based on Netflix's own data, the total views between Part 1 and Part 2 declined by 10.4%. And that's even with them fudging the numbers, by the way. Even with them fudging the numbers. Because, of course, they do. So even a 10.4% from their own thing. Netflix's data is also for global viewers, while Samba TV is only for the States. So when we look at that 40% drop-off for the stateside thing, I think that's... I can believe that, actually. 10% globally. Obviously, it's not going to be 10% in every single market. So 40% in the state... Yeah. I can believe that. I genuinely can believe that. And like I said, I think the true metric is going to be whether they continue the franchise or not. Because they're trying to turn it into a franchise. I don't think that they will. I really don't think that they will. And the article notes here, it will be interesting to see what kind of legs Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, will have. The first film saw its viewership and views increase in its second week, given it had a full week compared to just the weekend. According to Netflix, in its second week on the streamer, the film drew in 34 million views and 77 million hours viewed. In its third week, the film had a huge drop in viewership. It only brought in 11.1 million views and 25 million hours viewed. In its fourth week, Rebel Moon Part 1 brought in 3.9 million views. So it just fell off the face of a cliff. And 8.9 million hours watched. So by the film's fifth, it had just gone, basically. Now, interestingly, the first film did see a bit of a bump recently. 12.5 million hours viewed. 5.5 million views. I cannot think... I just can't see this being that different. I think that 40% drop-off is pretty accurate. If Netflix's own metrics, which you can't believe, because they, generally speaking, would show them to be more favourable to themselves, and there's no independent, verifiable way for... There doesn't have to be independently verified. I can believe that actually it's bigger. 10 point whatever is, you know, 10 point, what was it, 10 point percent? 10.4% drop in views. I think it's going to be bigger. I mean, it's getting absolutely ripped apart, torn apart, destroyed even, nuked even. So there you go. Not much else really to say, to be fair. Scargiver. I think the only scar they gave me was scars of boredom. Fun times. What did you guys think of the film? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? We'll see whether it's successful, because they'll greenlight more or they won't. And this definitely... the story's not done. So if they don't greenlight more, it's not because the story's done, because it's not done. It's not like this is encapsulated in one thing. No, the story is not done at all. If they greenlight more, one, I'll be surprised, but two, that will show that it was successful. Successful enough. I remember Batwoman kept getting renewed. That was definitely not successful. So, anyway, leave your thoughts down below. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye-bye now.